I'm making this video from up in an apple tree for a fast fact on apples. People have asked me if they can grow an apple tree from the seeds of the apple that they got in the grocery store from the farmer's market, and the short answer is, well, yeah. As long as the seed is viable, you can stick it into the ground or into a pot of soil and you will get a plant that will be an apple tree, one that resembles the tree from which you got this fruit, but there's no way of knowing what type of fruit that new plant will bear. And it has everything to do with apple tree genetics that I won't get into. But what you might want to know that I didn't know until I was a comfortable adult is that every apple variety that you see in the supermarket, every successful, delicious apple tree came from a grafting. Yes, every one of them. This here is probably a wild apple tree, and there's nothing wrong with wild apples. A lot of the times you get like the best little pie apples from them. All the apples I've tried from this tree are deliciously sweet with a bitter back end, like me. And if I were to plant any one of these little apples taken off of this tree, you don't know which traits you're going to get in the resulting tree or what kind of traits those apples will have. That's why apple growers grow their trees from stock, nursery stock. They will take a cutting from a preferred tree and put this onto an existing stump. They truly go out and cut down mature trees, leaving the stump with that living cambium layer, which is the layer between the dead heartwood and the bark. Trees are essentially straws that carry nutrients and water and electrolytes and stuff up and down the trunk of the tree and then out through the limbs. So apple growers will get a really good switch off of a really good tree and then graft it on to an existing root system. And what's so neat is that they can mix it. They can put several different varieties on the same tree. And oftentimes if they're trying to grow a high density orchard that just bears a ton of fruit, they'll put a regular switch or a regular branch onto existing dwarf rootstock. The new tree can be a dwarf despite the fact that the branches they're using for the actual fruiting parts were not dwarf. I always thought that would take forever, but it only takes a couple of years. A couple of years from sticking one of these into a tree trunk, taping it together, gluing it together, and it's bearing fruit. And the number one cost of any farming production, especially in the tree growing profession, is labor, because you have to prune the trees so that they've got the right shape and size. You have to thin out the blossoms, thin out the apples. You don't want to just have a ton of apples. You want the tree to be able to support the apples that are there so they grow big and sweet and however you want them to grow. I worked for a company that built like platform pickers and stuff for tractors that would go in between the rows. And I remember one of the stickers that the tree companies put out said, "Grow fruit, not wood." They were trying to find ways to make more of the little fruity things and less of this stuff. I have a friend I haven't seen in a while now, and her family had an entire orchard with all of these heirloom, beautiful, like special apple varieties. And then something happened where they either lost the property or it was sold to a developer, and all of these apple varieties were just going to be absolutely wiped out. So she went in and she saved a whole bunch of switches off of these trees and grafted them onto her own property. So like she saved her grandmother's apples that would have been lost. Apple varieties are maintained in a line. And you can patent an apple variety if you do a bunch of crosses and hybridization, and you can, I don't know, there are rules. But then you get to name it, and you get to name your apple variety, and then there's a patent on it. I'm just south of the Finger Lakes region where there are tons of apple producers. I would also like to comment that the venison I've eaten from upstate New York near the Finger Lakes region is absolutely delicious. Those apple-fed deer, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to growing apples, and I don't know most of it.